Welcome back to the John Fredericks Radio Show. And you just heard a little bleep or segment of Victory at Sea, which means one of our best guests is coming on today, Admiral James Ace Lyons Jr., U.S. Navy retired. Admiral, welcome to the show.
Well, nice to be with you and your listeners this morning.
Well, you got Colonel Mike on and Dr. Michael Scheuer, former CIA special agent at the Bin Laden desk. We just had Dr. Richard Fisher, a friend of yours, on a few minutes before.
He's a great man.
Great man.
American.
Great American. And we thank you for your time to come on, Admiral. We'd like to talk a little bit, with your knowledge and your positions. Just tell the audience how many years, what is it, 36, 38 years you were in the U.S. Navy?
Yeah, well, actually, if you take 4 years at the Naval Academy and the Naval Reserve and Merchant Marine that I started in 1945, I guess I went to sea covering a period of 42 years.
My gosh, what a career. And a very great, you're a great American, by the way. And I mean, anybody who wants to know who Admiral Lyons is, just go on YouTube and put in Ace Lyons, and you could see the kind of American this is. Admiral Lyons, we got some hot stuff coming up. We just spoke with Dr. Fisher, Michael and I. And tell us, what do you think's happening there in the South China Seas now with China, in your assessment?
Well, what they've done, and they've started it in 1993. When we left Subic Bay in 1992, a vacuum was created. And what happens when you create a vacuum? It gets filled. And China in 1993 announced their 9-dash line again, reviving a very questionable line, which claimed essentially almost the entire South China Sea as their territorial waters. And what they've been doing since then is using what they call is soft power. In other words, keeping their aggressive and bullying tactics just below the threshold of open firing or conflict. And that's what they've been doing really throughout the world, is using soft power to advance their objectives. And of course, their number one objective in the South China Sea, obviously, is Taiwan. And they want hegemony not only out to the first island chain, they want hegemony out to the second island chain, which includes Guam, our most forward operating base in the Western Pacific today. So they basically would like to drive us out of the Western Pacific. Make no mistake.
Admiral,
course,
how many ships did you have under your command when you were the Pacific Fleet commander?
Well, yeah,